From a brief glance, you'd more than likely call him a super fraud, incapable of ever being a true hero. Hell, I sure thought that in the beginning. Stealing equipment from the future to become a superhero 500 years in the past, and doing nothing with his abilities but promoting fast cars and the latest toothpaste. But when you look a little deeper, and peel away at the outer layers, you'll find that he is more than meets the eye. That he's the greatest superhero you've simply never heard of. And his name is... Where do I begin with Booster Gold? Well, Booster adores the spotlight, he's extremely competitive, a huge materialist, and maybe a little narcissistic. Yet whenever the going gets tough, Booster Gold is someone you can count on to drop everything to save the day, whether punched square in the face by Doomsday, or struck by lightning, or tarnishing his own public image. He's a guy that tries to do the right thing in all the wrong ways. I'm gonna be honest with you guys for a second. Booster just wasn't my vibe in the beginning, to keep it real. But once you crack open a solid Jergens book of Booster, and you sprinkle in a bit of that Giffen, with some Johns on the side, I swear to God. See, what I love about Booster is that he can save the day 100 times over, but no matter what, it just comes across as disingenuous or manufactured to people, based solely upon him not only being a superhero, but a super celebrity. It's also because of this that most heroes write him off as a complete knobhead, including Superman. Superman hates Booster Gold, by the way, and one of the funniest moments between the two that displays Superman's hatred the most has to be when Booster Gold was thinking of leaving Metropolis, and Superman just stares at him like...
No, I can't laugh yet. I've got to hold it in.
But this sadly can't be helped, mostly due to the fact that Booster Gold has to play his role as the Fool. Now, the Fool can be seen as reckless, naive, and you'll never believe this one, foolish. But being the Fool can also mean taking a leap of faith that the universe will catch you no matter how awful things seem to turn. Like much later in Booster Gold's career, when all sense of chasing fame and fortune is forgone in favor of doing something that goes beyond himself, protecting the very fabric of time and space despite never getting any credit. Booster Gold's destined to be the Fool, and it all starts in the year 2462. See, Michael had a bright future ahead of him as an exceptional football player, but times were tough. Michael had to take care of his family due to his father leaving to pursue a career in gambling, leaving Michael purposely betting on his own games and throwing them to provide for his family. But by pulling what's called a Pete Rose, Michael tarnished his own career. So with nothing left and his family completely ashamed of his actions, Michael skipped town to escape all accountability and found work as a janitor for a superhero museum in Metropolis, filled with several key items used by superheroes throughout history, like a Legion ring, a power suit, and a time sphere. By this point in Michael's mind, he just sees himself as this monumental failure. But looking at all this gear around him, what if Michael went way back in time, a place where no one would ever know him, become a rich and famous superhero, and just left everything else behind? That doesn't sound bad at all with the context given. So Michael, with the help of his stolen security drone named Skeets, they'd crash land together in the year 1986, arriving specifically days before the assassination of President Ronald Reagan, to swoop in, stop the assassination, and fast-track himself to the big leagues. Fortunately enough for Booster, he just narrowly saves the day and instantly becomes a household name. Not like Reagan needed the help though, bro's got abs of steel. Booster accomplishes his goal instantly, going from zero to hero. Only you don't just rise to the top without making a few enemies along the way. Like Senator Ballard, also known as the incredibly forgettable villain named the Director, who organized the assassination attempt, who commissions villains like Blackguard, the Chiller, and Mind Dancer to face against Booster Gold, in efforts to kill or diminish Booster Gold as nothing but a fraudulent hero to the masses. But Booster Gold is that guy. So the Director kinda just dies in a fiery explosion, never to be seen again. You won't be missed. Now, it's really by the halfway point of Booster's solo run that it gets more interesting. See, because since Michael time traveled 500 years into the past, over time Michael contracted a virus that could only be cured in his time. So heading into the future 6 months after Michael's initial departure, with characters like Trixie Collins and the time-traveling legend known as Rip Hunter, on arrival, Michael finds that he's become public enemy number 1 for the crime of time travel, which kinda makes you wonder that if time travel is such a big deal here, why would they just leave a fucking fully functional time machine in a museum like that? Well, it's here while evading the law, Michael discovers that his mother passed away not long after his departure, and his sister was left to fend for herself. Guilt-stricken, Michael turns himself in to face the punishment of execution for the crime of time travel, believing it's what he deserves for turning out just like his father. But before the public execution would commence, Michael would end up learning that it was always his destiny to live out his life as Booster Gold in the past. Just as Michael's sister Michelle Carter swoops in and saves everyone at the very last second to travel back into the past to escape the future, allowing for Michael to return to his life as a super celebrity just in time to accept an invitation to Justice League International from the most vile car salesman in comics ever, Maxwell Lord. Alright, let's pump the brakes a bit, because he wasn't always a vile man. Maxwell Lord in the beginning was actually a pretty solid guy that genuinely believed in what the Justice League stood for and helped fund their endeavors. Naturally, when you meet a businessman in a superhero comic, they kind of always turn out to be a villain, or real life in general. But Maxwell Lord was a subversion of the evil businessman trope. And while yeah, he possesses a silver tongue and is shown to be incredibly manipulative, which are traits most commonly associated with being evil, in order to be a good businessman, you kinda have to level up your speech. Although Maxwell Lord used his abilities to show the world superheroes they could believe in, hoping it would naturally inspire humanity to be better. After all, Max even had the keys at one point to rule over the world way before and completely rejected it. Max's sheer altruism made him gamble his own life countless times on superheroes saving the day. And they always did. It wasn't until the early 2000s that this would be changed due to Dan DiDio wanting to make every member of the JLI's lives a living hell for some reason. In effect, making most know Max now as a better version of the Purple Man in every conceivable way, that uses his powers of speech to command those to do his bidding, to rid the world of superheroes by enacting a global martial law in the not too distant future, by controlling Superman to hunt down and kill superheroes with the help of Batman's sadistic AI called Brother Eye, if not for Wonder Woman sliming him before he could achieve his master plan, although coming back as a Black and White Lantern much later. He was even recently in Rom V's New Gods, which was pretty cool. Bro basically becomes a fucking space Nazi. Now, Booster Gold becomes a member of the Justice League International by proving his capabilities to Batman after demolishing the Royal Flush Gang. They're a gang of metas that dress in the theme of playing cards that you'll probably recognize from Batman Beyond. Booster is then hired and hijinks ensue with the team, marking the beginning of a beautiful friendship between Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. It was while reading JLI that I was mainly interested in the Blue and Gold team-up stories, but God do I love this team. I thought it was quite refreshing and nothing like anything I'd ever seen featuring the Justice League, because usually the Justice League, as far as I've read or ever seen, have always felt like the gods of Olympus, always filled with straight-edged heroes that are nothing but flawless and take everything seriously. Whereas with the JLI, it really feels like a family of screw-ups that just want to do the right thing and have fun while doing it. One of my favorite quotes about this subject comes from Andy Helfer, who says, "The Justice League is a fraternity where heroes can take off their masks and let their hair down. They can be human for a change, and in effect, be like us." It's that very idea for which I truly appreciated the humanity put on display for these heroes. Not only do they solve real-world problems, but behind a lot of the banter and blah-ha-has, you get to appreciate aspects of these characters not widely known that give you a personal attachment to them. Like, I know fuck all about Guy Gardner, except he's just an asshole with a loudmouth that gets one-tapped by Batman. But when you learn his backstory, you just instantly understand why he's the way that he is. And you can't help but feel bad for the guy. His dad was a piece of shit that fucking left him and his family high and dry. So where Booster went through the same exact thing and craved the spotlight to make up for that loss of attention, Guy internalized it far differently, by masking his pain with blind anger towards everything around him as a defense mechanism. You can also look at Blue Beetle, better known as Ted Kord, and find out he's a guy that spends a lot of his time alone, behind a screen, or looking at a mirror to make sure he's still in shape, for Ted was bullied a majority of his early life for being overweight, leading him to become incredibly insecure and oftentimes self-deprecative. This is shit I'd never know if not for Booster Gold, which is crazy because if not for his inclusion in the JLI, Booster Gold would have been nothing but a distant memory in some 80s comic book according to Dan Jurgens. I like to think that Booster Gold being a part of the team also just has a natural way of making leaguers see the best parts of themselves, like Ted most of all. Before JLI, Blue Beetle was a somewhat serious character, but when next to Booster Gold, it's like doing a presentation while your best friend tries his hardest not to laugh at you. They both can't help themselves but to make the hero gig a fun time, and like working with your best best friend, you can either bring the best parts out of each other or the worst. One example I can pull upon where the friendship between Michael and Ted shines the most was when they were both flat broke. So they come up with an idea that leads the Justice League into complete bankruptcy by building a casino on top of a living island, just for a random villain to stop by and casually clear house in the end. What's crazy to me about this issue is where Booster and Beetle are afraid of what Max will do to them for losing all the team's funds. Booster says Max will definitely put a bullet through his head, just for Blue Beetle to say Max would never ever do a thing like that. If only you knew, Ted. If only you knew. In the end, they're placed on janitorial duty as punishment, and after cleaning Guy's disgusting room multiple times, Booster quits to join a team that's nothing but a complete fad called the Conglomerate out of spite. Superman also kind of just dies, but a pretty cool fun fact I learned about Booster was that he was actually the one to name Doomsday when he got tossed around like a bowl of salad. After which we end up at the cusp of shitty mid to late 90s comics that had a weird fascination with bulky costumes and pockets. That left the average comic chud wanting a serious Justice League back. So DC gave Martian Manhunter a revolver, and he told the League to kill themselves. All to make way for Grant Morrison's Justice League, while the others, in complete denial, formed a team called the Super Buddies. Fast forward to Identity Crisis, which marks one of the darkest periods of DC Comics history, an event that took the whimsy and fantastical side of superheroes and snapped it completely over its knee, by having none other than Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney, murdered. All over the spectrum of heroes mourn Ralph's loss. And with Ralph's loss, it marks as an example that while heroes are not promised tomorrow, the same can also be said for the ones we protect by wearing the mask. Therefore, following Sue Dibney's death, it marks as the end of the fun era for superheroes all around, since the Justice League is finally noticing that the bad guys are continuously getting badder and things aren't getting any better, casting aside most jokey or young heroes including Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, since really whenever they've been on the team, they were the jokes. They were the ones that could never be counted on. So to the League, they were no longer essential. Thus, when Blue Beetle needed the League for something, most rolled their eyes and scoffed at the very idea, which is heartbreaking to say the least, because in Countdown to Infinite Crisis, Blue Beetle is made aware of some shady operations in Cord Industries, and when beginning an investigation, there are several attempts made against Ted's life in search of answers. So Ted turns to the League for help, the same people he fought alongside with for years, just for his request to be met with complete dismissal or a pat on the back and a keep me posted. There's even a moment between Ted and Jean that is just cold. Like whatever friendship they once had is just completely faded away. Disregarding that Ted was almost assassinated, his Beetle ship is set to explode on ignition, and is almost struck by lightning if not for Booster saving his friend. Without their help and Booster in the hospital, Ted has to go it alone, telling Booster's nurse, which choked me up the first time I read it, that when Booster wakes up, whatever happens to Ted, it's not Booster's fault, and that he never had a better friend than Booster. All culminating in Ted finding out that the man behind the curtain is none other than Maxwell Lord, secretly operating in the shadows, gathering all necessary intel on every important superhero in the world, to create an army of controllable superhumans called OMACs that could eliminate them, guided by Brother Eye, all in service of Max seeking to rid the world of metas that hover over humanity, with Max as the exception, of course. Oh, the irony. Blue Beetle has been nothing but a pawn that's reached the other side of the chessboard, while Max has been the king all along. And so Max reaches his hand out for Ted to join him, but Ted doesn't give in, and Ted Cord is shot dead. Immediately following this up in the OMAC project, Ted Cord's body and any evidence of his discrepancy with Max is incinerated, except for Ted's goggles that are sent personally to Batman as a message from Checkmate that Blue Beetle is dead. With this, Batman calls a meeting with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Booster Gold to break the news, and it doesn't go well. At all. Booster blames Batman for his death for disregarding his pleas for help, and so Booster Gold and the original members of the JLI hunt down Ted's killer. Unfortunately though, they never end up getting their vengeance for the death of Blue Beetle, but that's not to say that Maxwell Lord doesn't get what he deserves in the end. And yet despite this, Booster's had enough of the hero game. His friends are either dead or suffering, and it becomes too much to handle for him. So Booster goes back to his original time to take a break and just live for a while. Of course, during this there are like several major events going on all all at once, the most notable of them being Infinite Crisis, which was an event that saw the son of an alternative Lex Luthor attempting to overwrite the main universe with the one of Earth 2. And had it not been for Ted Kord's death, a piece of alien technology tied to the Beetles called the Scarab would have never attached itself to Jaime Reyes, becoming the third Blue Beetle and aiding in the victory over Brother Eye before it could destroy the multiverse. An event never meant to occur if not for Booster Gold stepping in to rewrite history. So in the aftermath, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman felt that the heroes of Earth could manage without them for a while, and so taking a year to heal, everyone else would have to step up in their stead, in which the first to make a big and loud impression would of course be none other than Booster Gold. Coming back to the 21st century with a new fervor for heroship, Booster Gold would stop catastrophic events reported in the future before they'd ever occur, becoming Booster's new approach at being a hero. As it was Booster's lack of knowledge of events in the 21st century that Booster began to torture himself with the idea that if he had known more about the demise of his best friend, that he could have done more to prevent it. Because of this, it sends Booster Gold's popularity to the moon, and Booster swiftly returns to the life of fame and fortune. But it's not enough for Booster. He feels he's got to make a big display that Metropolis can trust him to save the day. So Booster hires a guy to pose as a villain to stage a big fight, so that way the people will believe in Booster further. Only this backfires astronomically when the guy comes out to the public about the scheme. Booster Gold gets cancelled. All his sponsors, movie deals, promotions are gone. The public hates Booster, and his image is forever tarnished. Even worse, a new guy by the name of Supernova just shows up saving the day countless times over, and the public love him for it. And this just fucking gets to Booster, man. Booster can't stand the idea that the spotlight isn't on him anymore, that the people hate him while some faceless man is beloved by the people. So he constantly slanders on the guy and attempts to clear his name, but nothing works, until a being called Belastro begins wreaking havoc in Metropolis. This is Booster's ticket to clearing his name. Only Supernova swoops in and transports Belastro with a flick of the wrist. So Booster just gets fucked even further, to the point that the people just hate him so much they wished he'd just explode. And they get their wish. It's a tragic end to Booster, and becomes all the more depressing when no one really shows up for his funeral except his sponsors, that arrive solely to plaster their shit all over his goddamn casket. And with Skeets alone in 2005, he just flies to Michael's distant relative Daniel Carter to find that they're basically the same person, with the hopes that Daniel can somewhat take Michael's place in his honor, but it doesn't work at all. Now, to skip over a massive chunk of 52, it's found out through Skeets that Michael deliberately faked his own death and ruined his name in the media, donning the title Supernova to hit Skeets where he'd least expect it, because plot twist, a huge eldritch butterfly had nestled itself inside Skeets and manipulated certain events in the timeline, so to destroy the entirety of the multiverse comprising of 52 dimensions. To keep a long story short, Booster saves the multiverse by meeting Ted for the first time all over again and throwing a nuclear football into the time stream. And if not for his selfishness in the very beginning, Booster Gold would have never become the greatest hero you've never heard of. In the aftermath, it's found out that there are points in time that require some TLC from Booster Gold. Moments like the birth of the Flash, or the Kents existing to raise Clark Kent, and Hal Jordan becoming Green Lantern are all erased, leaving it a job for Booster Gold to go back in time to prevent the prevention of these heroes' existences. Booster Gold essentially becomes a time cop, with Rip Hunter as his dispatcher. Naturally, Booster wants to capitalize off of being a time cop, but in order to be successful, no one can ever know. Booster Gold will have to forever remain the greatest hero no one's ever heard of. This obviously doesn't sound like a promising endeavor for Booster at first, until Rip Hunter says that if Booster patches up the timeline, Booster can save Ted from ever dying. So Michael jumps at the chance without a second thought, and mainly stumbles through a series of events, just barely saving the Kents in the late 1800s, or convincing Sinestro that he's his biggest fan, and his final mission to prevent Barbara Gordon from ever being paralyzed by the Joker. Booster goes back in time to prevent this moment from ever occurring, yet Booster fails to save Barbara hundreds of times, due to that moment being what's called a fixed point in time, a point in time that can never be changed. Rip set Booster on the mission to show that no matter how much he wants to save Ted, Ted's death was supposed to happen. As shitty as it is, Ted's death led to so many things that, if prevented, could mean the end of the timeline as they know it. Only just as Rip tries convincing Booster it's the right thing to do, Black and Blue Beetles appear out of thin air asking Booster to save Ted's life. This is everything Booster's wanted and more, and Rip thinks he's not gonna take it. Booster tells Rip to kick rocks, fucks up Max, and Ted is saved. And for the time Ted's back, It's like the spark of life Michael had been missing for so long finally returns. Only the more time Ted stays alive, the more the timeline changes for the worse, creating a new present day where Max succeeds in ruling the world. With so much death and misery because Ted never dies, Ted takes it upon himself to say goodbye to Booster, and travels back to just after he was saved to die at the hands of Max to preserve the timeline. In the end, Ted Cord died a hero twice over, and Booster had a chance to say goodbye to his best friend. Even so, when Booster comes back to the present, all he wants to do is quit. He's lost his best friend forever. He saves the multiverse and the timeline every day like it's nothing, and still people see him as an absolute fraud. The weight of everything becomes unbearable, to the point Batman notices and shows Booster photos of the night Barbara was shot, holding on to them for years until he believed Booster finally grew up, telling Booster that he's proved himself and the whole world wrong. Booster isn't a fraud. He's become the greatest hero the world will never know. I give hope to men, though I keep none for myself.
Why don't you get the fuck out of here before I shove your quotations book up your fat fucking ass?
This convinces Booster to keep going at being a time cop, and even reuniting with his supposed to be dead sister, Michelle. Yeah, she died in an alien explosion in the 80s. I kind of forgot to mention that. But she gets over it as the series relatively becomes time adventure after time adventure. If I could compare it to anything, it's like DC crossed with Quantum Leap. See, the whole story is really just us watching Booster Gold become the hero he was always meant to be. To the point the Booster that started this whole adventure is unrecognizable to the one by the end from all the lessons, the people Booster came across, and events he had to go through to save the timeline. Some defining moments I really quite love throughout the series would have to be Booster months into the future, aiding a Booster months into the past, showcasing how matured Booster's become, or discovering that Booster Gold is Rip Hunter's father. And Booster arriving back to the golden days of the JLI just to have one last adventure with his best friend, as a little present to himself for holding out so long. He's only human after all. And I think the saddest moment in this series is when all Booster wants more than anything is his friend back. Revisiting Ted's wake, or killing him as a Black Lantern, and his visits in the 80s, they're all not his version of Ted. Booster from now on will always be a visitor and never a constant to Ted. So in order to move on and overcome his own guilt and grief over Ted, Booster has to come to terms with the fact that they're never going to make new memories or inside jokes, no late night hangouts, no stupid arguments, no more silly pranks pulled on the Justice League, no more anything. After all, the hardest part about grief isn't the acceptance that they're gone, it's finally letting go. Ted Cord was and will always be Booster Gold's best friend until the end of time. It's just Booster thought it'd last forever. Oh, fuck you. So Batman gets kablammed by Darkseid and sent through time, which leaves Booster, Rip, Superman, and Green Lantern to journey through time to rescue him. Only the adventure kinda sucks, and they don't really save Batman, but really just help him move through time to the present day. Although you do get small peeks of Booster raising Rip Hunter, and it's really the highlight of the whole series, to be honest. But once Booster and Rip return to the present, everything changes around them. Batman's a killer, Aquaman nuked Europe, and Superman doesn't exist. So Booster flying around to figure out a way to fix everything, the US government think Booster's an Atlantean and send Doomsday to kill him. And it's through this chaos that Barry and Booster manage to run into one another. Pun intended. This is all scripted. Even this RPG explosion. Oh. Yeah, you're dead now. Fuck you. Booster hitches a ride with Barry's Speed Force energy and arrives back at a place called the Vanishing Point to fix the timeline. Only Booster completely forgets what to do because the New 52 timeline has already cemented itself. So everything that was already confusing gets even more complicated when there are two different Booster Golds in the same timeline. One, a completely brand new Booster Gold with a few variations, and the other as the original Booster Gold we've been following since the beginning, now much older. The new Booster Gold goes on to lead the new Justice League International, but it's just not the same, while the original operates in the background still as a time cop. Now, for whatever fucking reason, they are both erased from existence upon Superman and Wonder Woman kissing on live television, and later appear once again during DC's Convergence event, which I guess was about Brainiac attaining the power of time. During this absolute insanity, Brainiac captures the Booster Golds and Michelle, threatening to kill Michelle if not given the location of Vanishing Point. This isn't so Brainiac can imprison every time traveler before they can ever time travel to prevent Brainiac from attaining the power of time travel. My brain is fucking wrecked with pain. in anguish. The new Booster Gold gives up the location, and Brainiac hurtles them all through time. And in the midst of this, the original Booster Gold's body starts to rapidly age due to the overwhelming exposure of chronal time energy from Brainiac, as he's endlessly moving through different periods of time while the others chase after, until none other than Ted Kord catches him, reuniting the original with Rip, Michelle, and the new Booster. It's set aside as the original Booster Gold's life still hangs in the balance of time, with the pair resting his body in the core of Vanishing Point for the original Booster to absorb time as its source to negate the chronal effects. To come out of it, the new Wave Rider, which is like a really strong dude that can manipulate time for you power scalers out there. Together as a team, they help the heroes save the multiverse from Brainiac, and from that moment on, Booster Gold's kinda just gone for a while until Rebirth. Ted Kord is also back, but he's not Blue Beetle, he's just the CEO of Kord Industries. Booster also has an adventure with Fred Flintstone and with Superman in an arc called Booster Shot, which I really happen to like since Superman time travels to moments before Krypton explodes to see his family, until Booster swoops in to be the responsible one for a change, stopping Superman from damaging time by saving Krypton, completely changing Superman's view of Booster Gold, along the way discovering Booster's backstory of betting and throwing his own games to help his sick mother and sister, while his dad often came home to beat on his family before going back out to piss away money they needed. Even in the 25th century, deadbeat dads still exist, and while Superman still dislikes Booster's approach to hero work, he can't deny the good he's done despite the cards dealt out to him, giving Booster the idea to see his mom one last time before her passing, to let her know of all the good he's done, and will continue to do, but most of all, to have the chance to say goodbye to her, something Booster never got the chance to do, and a moment he regretted never having. This is a moment that hits particularly hard for me because I lost a loved one many, many years ago, and I was a very irresponsible fucking idiot, and I never got to say goodbye to them, and I will forever regret it till the day that I die. Yeah, once Booster Gold comes back to the present day with Superman, he hears about Batman getting married, coming up with the best idea that could make Batman the happiest man on planet Earth, giving Batman his parents back for a day. All for Booster to come out of the experience utterly broken. But surely with a little bit of therapy, Booster will be right as rain. Oh, brother. I really just despise how Tom King characterizes Booster Gold. I swear, it makes me want to rip my hair out, given that it feels like he had a certain animosity towards Booster specifically. At least to me, I just don't buy Booster Gold even thinking saving Bruce's parents would be a good idea, given what he learned from saving Ted, but what the fuck do I know? But what is Heroes in Crisis even about? Well, it's about a place called the Sanctuary that is provided to superheroes as a safe haven for those that struggle with PTSD and other mental health issues. It's a place where superheroes can be human. Only that safe haven becomes a murder haven because someone at the Sanctuary killed every hero residing in the Sanctuary. The murders are later pinned on Harley Quinn and Booster Gold to find out that Wally West was the murderer the whole time. Like I said, I despise this event in the DC history because it's just so all over the place and really feels like it's trying so hard to be some monumental story, but it's just corny as shit. This is also a thing, and I don't really know how to feel about it. Afterwards, a sick as fuck event called Dark Knight's Death Metal occurs. Booster Gold had nothing to do with this event from start to finish, but the awesome thing about this event was that it brought histories that had been long forgotten back to every character in the DC universe, which brings us into the unforgettable and long-awaited team-up series Blue and Gold, showcasing Booster attempting to become a popular streamer with Skeets by his side, while failing miserably to save the Justice League from aliens on his debut stream, until Ted Kord reluctantly arrives at the scene to help his best friends save the day. Once the aliens are stopped and the Justice League is saved, it's in the aftermath that while Booster handles the press, the Justice League approaches Ted to ask to join the team. At first, Ted thinks they're asking for both him and Booster, but that's quickly shut down. The League only wants Ted. Booster can kick rocks for all they care. So Ted, being the best friend that he is, says that if they won't take in Booster, they won't get him either. And with that, the League swiftly fucks right off, as Ted approaches Booster to basically say that the League didn't want the both of them to join, to spare Booster's feelings from being hurt. But it doesn't mean they can't start a team of their own with the proper funding from Kord Industries. Together, Ted and Booster go on various adventures and stream the whole thing to build up credibility with the people, only to run into several snags along the way, like Kord Industries firing Ted, them not being able to afford the rent to their own office, and some villain called Omnizon beefing with them just because. I gotta say that I like this series particularly because it kind of felt like Jurgens was paying tribute to a lot of Booster Gold's history and tying up a few loose ends, like reintroducing Trixie Collins, who was was one of the first people Booster ever met and sort of had a thing with, or the identity of the Black Beetle being an evil version of Booster Gold all along, and the mystery behind who Rip Hunter's mother really is. It never gets answered, but once you look at Rip together with Trixie, it just makes sense. Although it's kind of a shame that the series is so short. It genuinely felt as though this was meant to become an ongoing series as I read it, especially by the end when they all call wraps on the Blue and Gold venture because they're just flat broke. Booster's carefree attitude finally cracks, feeling genuine sadness that the Blue and Gold mission failed. All he wanted to do was help people with his best friend all over the world, but it seems like everything Booster ever touches always falls apart, with Ted saying to Booster that there comes a time when you just gotta pack it in and at least say that you tried, just for Batman to swoop on in and lend them $20 million to keep Blue and Gold going, ending the series with them excited that they can keep going on more adventures. Just to end. I get the joke of it ending when they finally become such a success that an end is so far out of sight, but I just wish that there was more. I love Booster Gold after reading every possible thing I could find on the guy, including Blue Beetle. At first I didn't like Booster Gold, and I had a very surface level understanding of the character. I just thought before reading about him that he was a very vain and fraudulent character. But as of today, he's up there with some of my favorites simply because of the message Booster Gold serves as. He's a guy like you or me that's just stumbling through the awkwardness of life, making what he thinks are the best decisions for himself and living with them, whether good or a colossal failure. And that's all we can really do. We can't see into the future. We don't know how things will work out for us. And most of all, we don't know when our last day will be. So why not make the most with the time we have to not just cherish it, but to try and make as much good as we possibly can. Booster Gold has given me a new fervor for life and its ever dwindling beauty, and I'm forever grateful for it. Now go out and make some mistakes. And always remember to stay golden. Shout out to the guy that owns the Booster Gold account on readallcomics.com. This guy left a comment on every single Booster Gold comic I ever read. Shout out the GOAT for real.